District 3, which are the cities of Parkland, Coral Springs, North Lauderdale, and Tamarack. Today, he's going to address our youth and our community at large concerning the COVID-19 pandemic. Commissioner, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you so much for allowing me to participate in your broadcast. I'm happy to be here to speak to the residents of Northwest Broward, both young and old, because I'm sure you get a big audience. And I'm happy to discuss a lot of the different things that are going on and spend some time with you. Thanks for doing this.
Thanks again, Commissioner. Commissioner, how are you and your family doing in terms of coping with COVID-19 and engaging despite social distancing and self-quarantine?
So it's interesting because like everybody else, we've been now 3-4 weeks of pretty much, my adult kids and my college kids are home. We're all staying in the house. We're lucky. We have it better than a lot of people in the area. We have a nice house. We have plenty of food. We're having a good time. We all get along. And it's been actually, in a way, without the negativity that goes with what's going on in the world, it's been positive for the family to be together, to really, talk about important things, to hang out and to have fun. One of the things I told my college age, children, or, they're between 23 and 20, was to try and make the best of this time. And I would say the same thing to you and your friends that are watching this. No one likes what's going on now. Everybody understands the being cooped up and the stir craziness that can go with being at home all the time. But make the best out of it. Instead of being and playing on video games or whatnot, study a little more, read a book, pick up a hobby that interests you, and learn as much as you can. During the last downtime, like 2008, 2009, during the financial crisis, a lot of good startups came out of, that time. And I would imagine a few years from now, we're going to be seeing different apps and different startups that guys like you and your friends are coming up with that will be the new rage. So make positive use out of what could be a negative time.
Commissioner, those are great words of encouragement to all. I want to turn to something that you have been an advocate for. And for those who don't know, a ship carrying 77 people showing influenza-like illness symptoms would like to dock at Port Everglades. In a statement by Holland America, there are 1,243 guests and 586 crew. Of those, 30 guests and 47 crew members are showing symptoms. They wanted to dock at Port Everglades, and you have advocated against it, instead suggesting they dock in Miami. So what is the situation looking like right now, and how are the discussions going with United Command, the city of Miami, and amongst the county commission?
So like everything else, things move so fast. And about 10 days ago, we were presented with this issue. And there was a ship heading, the Zandam was headed this way. And one of the things that I advocated for was, I didn't want them to just simply be able to pull a ship up at Port Everglades, drop people off that had these symptoms, and go from there. I wanted to make sure that if it was done, and it subsequently was done, that it was done correctly. So Unified Command can make the determination of who can enter the port waters and who can dock at the port for disembarkation. And after about 14 different drafts and iterations, they did come up with a safe plan to bring the ships. It turned from one ship to two ships because they brought another ship to sit out at sea to rendezvous to provide medical and assistance. So Broward County is a humanitarian type county. We didn't want to leave people out, to be sick. We wanted to make sure this was done correctly. And Unified Command came up with a plan where people that we work with the local hospitals to deal with some of the very sick people. There were about, over 1,000 people that were not from the area that were taken by bus, sterilized bus, to the tarmac at the airport for charter flights out. One to Canada, one went to Atlanta, San Francisco. I even got a call from the ambassador to New Zealand because there was people from New Zealand. So those ships docked in Port Everglades, and the issue was worked out. And for the safety of all, locals and others. There was other ships that were heading to Port Everglades. Not all of them submitted a plan, so some of them were sent to different ports. The Coral Princess just disembarked at Port of Miami, and they were doing similar type of protocols. But it became a very, very complicated issue because we're a hot zone down here to start taking people off cruise ships and bringing them into this community when we had a lot of issues that we had to deal with. I'm glad it was worked out. I think it was handled appropriately by Uniform Command, by the sheriff and the fire department and the county. So I'm glad that that issue worked out and people were safe.
We appreciate your much needed humanitarian leadership in what was definitely a devastating situation. I want to turn to Wisconsin, just held their primary voting. When it's time for the general election, have there been provisions made by Broward County to protect voters in fulfilling our democratic responsibility while simultaneously staying safe?
So that's a great question. And it's very topical, obviously. And I'm going to take you back a tiny bit first, because during this whole stay-at-home type of thing, we actually just did have a presidential preference primary a few weeks ago. So remember, Florida did hold its primary in the beginning of all this, and I happened to be the commission's representative to the canvassing board. The canvassing board was made up of myself, a county court judge, and the supervisor of elections, and our job was to go through the ballots and make sure that they were appropriately the mail-in ballots, basically be like the referees for the people that are counting the ballots. So while people were being sheltered in place, we did have a few meetings at the supervisor of elections to go through this. So we already pulled off an election, the presidential preference primary. But I have right here, actually, I just got it this morning. This is a document from our county attorney's office, because I've asked to put something on an agenda at the county commission meeting at one of our next meetings so that we can have the supervisor of elections officer come in and we can talk about what we're going to do with the August primary, which most of our constitutional officers in the county will be elected at, and then our general election in November, because a lot of this is controlled by state law. So one thing that, just seems like it could be, I'm just going to pull something out, could be obvious. Why don't we just mail everybody a ballot? Everybody who's a registered voter, why don't we just mail them a ballot and let them mail them back in and do the whole thing by mail? Seems logical, except that state law, according to our county attorney, does not allow for that to be done in this type of election. Even to the point where if you get a mail-in ballot, and I vote by mail in all elections, it's just easier to sit down and do it and mail it back in. But you can also bring it in certain to the supervisor's office, and you can bring that ballot back if you don't want to mail it. You can't even change the places of where you're going to do those mail-in. You can't bring it on your precinct and drop it off at your precinct. So there's a lot of things that are controlled by state law. I think over the next month, you're going to see a lot of notices and whatnot coming down from the state, because we're going to have to make sure that these elections go off without a hitch, because obviously Broward and Florida, but especially Broward, is always a hot spot for elections as well as for coronavirus. So it's an important issue that I think more and more information is going to come out over the next few weeks. Like I said, I have a memo here from our county attorney. I just got it this morning. So this is something that we're going to be working on over the next month to prepare for these elections. But it's a great, important question that everybody asks about.
I'm sure that the voters are so happy to hear that this issue is being addressed. There are so many great men and women who are at the front lines dealing with this pandemic. What is Broward County doing to protect the health and well-being of our first responders? And is there an ask that you have from the community to support them?
We spoke to the sheriff. The sheriff came to our commission meeting. He's the chief law enforcement officer. I think he just did an op-ed in the Sun Sentinel showing how much he's spending to provide PPE equipment to the first responders. I like to talk about first responders now. It's not just policemen and firemen. First responders are everybody that we're starting to come into contact with. Medical providers, nurses, the people that work in grocery stores, all these people that are making the world still go round today and helping deal with people are our first responders. So what do we have to do? Obviously, we have to abide by a lot of these different things that we're hearing coming down from local government. And look, everybody gets it. You know, you live in a community, you want to be with all your friends and you're, playing basketball or doing whatever it is, or having a party in your house because you figure you're home, you're not in school or you're not working. But we really need to, the best thing we can do to help these first responders and these medical people and people that are putting their lives on the line over this is to stay at home so that we hopefully don't get sick or we don't spread it. Anything that we can do to flatten the curve, really, that's the best we can do. And also then one of the things I noticed, like when I was riding my bike through, the different communities, I get it. People want to wear gloves and people want to wear their masks, but let's be considerate of what we're doing with it. If you drove to the Publix parking lot in Parkland right now, I bet you'd see 4 or 5 pair of gloves on the ground in the parking lot. It's just not nice, and it's kind of disrespectful for the people that are out there every day. Let's do the right thing. Let's remember what needs to be done and do the right thing during this time.
Those are great words of advice, and I hope that the community does do our best to help our first responders. One of the reasons that I think it's so important to have you on is because you alluded to it before, making sure that everyone is engaged across the generational spectrum. What is the Broward County doing to address the needs of youth and creating opportunities for youth engagement?
Um, I think that all of the ages that are involved in this are all going to have different needs as they come out of, this process. You know, Maybe it's not as huge of an issue in Parkland, but in other parts of the county, being home from not going to school really places burdens on students and families that are food challenged and that really count on school for good meals. So I think you're seeing a lot of the schools and a lot of the different places throughout the county open up for meal preparation. We're doing a lot with the hospital districts as far as testing throughout the county. We're opening up some of our regional parks for testing facilities so that people can get tested for this. Looking at the other side when we get through this, and we will get through this, and hopefully we'll get through this sooner rather than later, I think social services are going to be very important. You're going to have youth unemployment is going to go up. All unemployment is going to go up. So they're going to need to work with the county, and we're trying to get our facilitators in there to help people so that they can take advantage of the social services that we offer. Anything that you can think of on a social service basis, homelessness, drug addiction, um, elderly care, youth reading, anything that you can think of is now going to be magnified. The issues that we had before this, and there were issues, are now going to be magnified because of everything that's gone on with this pandemic.
That's very true. And I'm glad that you and the county are working to address youth engagement as well. One thing that the community knows about you, Commissioner Udine, is that you are always an advocate for our businesses. And that's why I want to give you this platform to address our businesses and what the county is doing to support them, particularly legislation like the CARE Act.
So I think that at this point, if you can use our local businesses wherever you are in the county, be it takeout, whatever you can use in a safe way, observing all the different orders that are in place, I think that it's important to do that. You see some things going around Facebook and the internet. Remember all these restaurants that were here for you when you did a charity event and you asked them to help you? Well, they need us now. So if we can do that, let's do that to support those local businesses. All of them are suffering greatly. They have a lot of issues that they have to get through. The CARES Act and these different acts that are coming through the federal government, we have our legislative team in Broward working and pushing information out to the different disciplines that need that so that they can take advantage of this. You see a lot of issues with the banking sector because they're making these PPP loans. All of that stuff is being facilitated, digested by legislative people within the county, and pushed out to the appropriate um, areas that need it. You know, Broward County is a big purchaser of goods and services. We do a lot, and we're planning on trying to front load some of those things. Like, we have dollars for road projects and we have construction projects. And if those can be pushed sooner, like now, it makes a lot of sense to keep people working. And what a better time to work on a road than now, when people really aren't on the roads as much. So we're trying to front end certain things that we can do as an employer or a purchaser of services. We also run the airport, the seaport, which we're dealing with those businesses that revolve out of those facilities, and they're going to need a lot of help from the county, and we're working through those as we speak.
Commissioner, you have said, and I quote, "By working together, we are all making a difference." How do you feel the community is doing today in following the guidelines and preventing the virus? And do you have any additional advice for us on what we can do?
Um, I think the community is doing a good job. I think that there is. I, this is a lot to ask the community. A lot of people are kind of glossing over that in a way. This is a lot to ask people to pretty much turn your life off. I mean, you built up a small business, and now the government is saying to you, you need to close that business for a while. The examples go on and on. So we're asking a lot of the community, but I think we're starting to see the results of the curve flattening, and you can see that we're trying to get towards the other side. I think from a community point of view, we need to keep doing what we're doing, and we need to stay vigilant, you know, for a little while longer till we get our handle, and we get around this. You know, everyone gets it. I mean, everybody over the last few weeks has called or sent emails. They want to have their business be considered an essential business so that they can work. And then on the other side, some people saying, just shut everything. Just shut every business down. But when you think about it, okay, so do you want to shut the grocery stores down? Well, no, keep those businesses open. Do you want to shut the restaurants down? No, keep the takeout open. Well, if you're going to keep the groceries open, then you need to make sure that you have the transportation network to fill those shelves up. I got an email the other day, and it's not that they don't mean well, they just don't understand. Someone said, why don't we close down all the childcare facilities? I find it crazy that a childcare facility is open. And logically, it makes sense. The schools are closed. Why don't we close the childcare? Well, what if you're a first responder? And if you're a first responder, you're that, you know, single parent that is a nurse and you have a child. Well, if you don't have anybody to watch your child, then you can't go to work. So there's a lot of things that are in there. So what I would suggest, and I would continue to impress upon the community, you're doing a great job. We'll get through this on the other side, but pay attention and be serious about what they're saying. Social distancing isn't putting 50 people in a room and hanging out on your patio. You know, use common sense.
And to solve this pandemic, to get through it, it's going to take an intergovernment approach. So, do you, as commissioner, and does the county commission feel supported by the federal, state government, and all of the municipalities?
I think that we all work well together. There's different ways, different areas of government have different kind of expertise. I think at the end of the day, this is going to be all hands on deck to get through to the other side. And when we do get on the other side, there's going to be a lot involved to make sure that we can try to get back to some level of normalcy. So yeah, all of the local governments and the county tries to work well together. We work well. I speak to the director of emergency management, Jared Moskowitz, on a daily basis. We speak to the governor's office all the time at the county. We speak to our federal partners all the time. I speak to all my cities. I talk to the people that represent, you know, city managers, elected officials, and we all want to try and work together to do the best that we can for this.
Commissioner Udine, I really do appreciate your incredible insight and engaging with me and the community. What are your final words of advice and encouragement to the youth and the community at large?
I'm going to tell the youth that are on there the same thing that I told my kids when this first started and they first came home and we first started hunkering down. You have the chance to use this time. This time is the time's going to go. Every hour the clock moves forward every hour. So you can either waste the time or you can use the time. I think you should use the time. Be opportunistic with the time, the downtime that you have. There's, you guys, especially you younger people, this is not foreign to you, doing everything online, Zooming meetings and chatting and apps and developing things. Everything that you can do right now, everything that you spend extra now will pay off in the long run. So if it's doing your online classes, do them. Don't just blow it off. If it's, if you're working, one of my sons is working. He's working every day. He's Zooming. He's doing his things. They're doing their spreadsheets. I think that we're going to come out of this very soon on the other side. But while we're taking this downtime, use it and don't waste the time.
Commissioner Udine, you have given us such great words of advice and encouragement. You represent our community so well, and we appreciate your leadership during this time and all the time. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you for having me, and keep up the good work. Let's get as much information out there as we can.
Thanks, Commissioner.